Active Investor here, bringing you another independent analysis. This time we're taking another look at ticker symbol VRX. That's Valeant Pharmaceuticals, of course. Good old VRX. The chart we have today is a 5-minute chart. Each candlestick on this chart representing 5 minutes of trading. Looking at only the data today, since we had such a big move, unfortunately it was a move to the downside. What happened? It looks like that the earnings were not so good at all. See if I can find a little more information on that real quick. Probably should have pulled this up before I started recording the video, but that's okay. It should just take 1 second. Whole lot of press releases. You guys know that VRX is a very talked about stock on the market and in the business world in general. It looks like what happened is that the guidance was not what shareholders wanted to hear either. Earnings and the guidance, not exactly what the shareholders wanted to hear. Talking about a first quarter loss, earnings per share less than expected, and the adjusted earnings per share also not what we wanted to see. So there was some major selling off on VRX. The stock fell a total of about 15% on the close from the open. Really not a good day for VRX at all. But it's not the end of the world, and it actually did make a fairly nice recovery. You can see we hit that low of $22.52, and we closed at $24.05. So that 15% decrease could have been much worse. We could have seen VRX at a 30% decrease or so. So we made a fairly nice recovery. But what happened after that recovery? We couldn't break up to the next channel, and all we did was we were stuck in this channel. So let me phrase it a little bit better. We couldn't break up from the next area of resistance and continue pushing up from the sell-off. We just kind of consolidated and channeled between $24.5, $25.5. All right. Now, with all that out of the way, let's take a look at some of our pivot points. First one, of course, being 24.5, the closest one to our shares. The next area on the way up, 25.5. Way up after there, 26.25, and after that, 27.25. Areas of support being 24.5, as we mentioned, 23.40, and then 22.90. So look for those areas to act as support and resistance, vice versa. And what do we need to see for VRX to make a move, which I'm confident it will. It can't just channel forever. Look how consolidated our moving averages are. They're all converging together. Now, once they converge together, there's only one thing that it can really do. Break to the upside or break to the downside. Now, also, if you look over here, we have a very, very light flag pull pattern. We have the sharp increase before the consolidation. It's not a perfect flag pull pattern, but it is a rough one. And the consolidation will agree that eventually we will break out of that. One thing that we can do when we see a pattern like that is draw some trend lines. Trend lines for a potential wedge. So why don't we do that now? Let's kind of take a look at where this wedge might look most ideal. It's not the perfect wedge, but we can kind of get an idea of what to expect if this thing does continue. I'm just going to kind of connect these. It's a very rough wedge as well. Not perfect by any means. But it does agree that we should definitely break this channel tomorrow. Now, of course, it's not perfect, but I don't think this channel will last at all. So two things can happen. We can break it to the upside, or we can break it to the downside. What is most likely? It's hard to tell, but our relative strength index can give us a clue. Let's take a look at where we went oversold from overbought. This didn't ever really go fully oversold in that area. All right, so we have a lower oversold into a lower oversold. That means the trend was still down. Then we have a higher oversold point, which means the trend was up. Indeed, agreeing with that is our candles. But after that, we trended down a little bit, lower oversold. This oversold point is almost identical. It looks slightly higher, but it's basically the same, agreeing that we're consolidating. So it's really tough to say. The RSI, it's honestly not telling us much. It's telling us that we're in a period of consolidation still. Basically the same thing that we already knew from our simple moving averages, and honestly just from the candles themselves. There's really not too much more data to pull based on this chart. We're going to need to see what VRX does pre-market. And if it just channels pre-market, you know, it might, because people aren't interested in it at the time. I think it can go either way. Pre-market, though, as I mentioned earlier, and as you guys know, VRX is a very popular stock. So look for it to either break 25.5 to the upside, or if you're looking for it to break to the downside, look for it to break 24.5. After that, look for resistance at 26.5. I'm sorry, 26.25. Resistance $26.25. If it breaks to the downside, look for the next support at $23.40. So those are going to be key areas. If 24.5 breaks, we should have support there. If 25.5 breaks, we'll have support up there at 26.25. Final area on this chart being 27.25. We do have one more right above it. Final area being $30. Hopefully VRX recovers. I do like VRX. No offense to you shorts out there. But, you know, it's a very volatile stock. It reads technical analysis fairly well, but occasionally it'll diverge from the technicals and just make its own insane, crazy moves. So you need to really take technical analysis with a grain of salt on a stock like VRX. But those are the areas that I'm going to be watching for a potential long or short play on this, depending on which way it breaks, if it breaks to the upside or if it breaks to the downside. That's all I have to say about VRX. Hope this analysis helped you out. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave a message below. Maybe you have some insight on what you think VRX will do. Let me know. I'm curious to hear. So, with all that said, let's see what it does tomorrow, and I'll catch you in the next analysis. Have a good one.